considered to be one of the most evil characters in fiction. He commits atrocities and is immensely ruthless towards anyone, doing whatever it takes for the sake of obtaining power. The novel Reverend Insanity was banned in its country of publication, China, due to how many problematic elements in the story, masterfully written by Gu Zhen Ren, all of which can be traced back to Fang Yuan and his philosophy. He is a demon in every sense of the word. He is a madman who refuses to change, obsessed with obtaining eternal life no matter the cost. He is also my favorite novel character, and Reverend Insanity remains my top book of all time. Speaking strictly about light novels, it is my favorite, with Overlord probably coming in at close second. The question is why? Well, that is what I hope to explain in this video. More importantly, I want to show you why most commentary on Fang Yuan grossly misinterpreting, and why I think this so-called evil protagonist is very different from how he's usually portrayed in online discourse. So yeah, let me tell you why you don't understand Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan was actually a Chinese scholar on Earth before transmigrating and suddenly finding himself in the Gu world as Gu Yue Fang Yuan. All the readers of Reverend Insanity know this, and they also know that he spent 500 years in the Gu world before traveling back in time to his 15-year-old self. A little confusing, I know, but you get used to it pretty quickly. A 500-year-old demon travels back in time and is now a teenager. You can already expect a lot of interesting things from this development alone. This 15-year-old Fang Yuan lives in his clan with his uncle and aunt, since his parents in the Gu world are already long dead. However, just like a massive bird trapped in a small cage, he inevitably feels restricted and begins plotting the moment he returns to the past. His goal? Become even more powerful than before and reach the pinnacle of existence that he was unable to attain in his past life. He wishes to obtain eternal life. Now, in most stories that have a similar premise of regression or transmigration, the main character usually has some kind of cheat ability that grants him an edge in his new life. Usually, they get to rely on their memories of the future or some underrated or overlooked power that turns out to be very overpowered. However, Reverend Insanity has some of those tropes embedded in his story, don't get me wrong, but it is done so masterfully well in the novel, making it far more complex and unique in execution compared to other stories. Fang Yuan has the Spring Autumn Cicada, which is responsible for his return to the past. However, he can't fully use the power of the Spring Autumn Cicada since it is weakened. Unfortunately, if it gets too strong, Fang Yuan's aperture, basically his core, will explode and he will die. As such, this seemingly overpowered source of strength suddenly becomes a guillotine that hangs over his head, bringing tension and a level of urgency to the story. Fang Yuan has to become very strong very quickly, or he will die. The problem? Fang Yuan has very little talent. He's average at best, having a mere C rank aptitude, and his village is not a powerhouse by any means. In simple terms, he is mediocre at best. However, this is where Fang Yuan's greatest strength comes to play: his incredible intelligence and the breadth of knowledge that he has managed to accumulate over his lifetime. Or simply put, his 500 years of experience. Readers of Reverend Insanity can relate.
No.
Using his superior intelligence and knowledge, Fang Yuan manages to turn his story around even from an early point and continues to turn many odds in his favor. This isn't without difficulty though, as the story of Reverend Insanity is filled with so many challenges, like a lot of challenges. It is to the point where you might begin to wonder if the world is actually against him. This runs very contrary to most stories where the main character has a very easy time, especially in the beginning, by relying on future knowledge. Fang Yuan always encounters setbacks, but he never lets that stop him and he keeps on pushing. I should preface at this point that I have only read the first 3 volumes of Reverend Insanity, so some of the things I say might have changed in future chapters, but from what I know up until the Imperial Court's Blessed Land arc, the story has remained consistently like this. So many obstacles, but Fang Yuan overcomes them with sheer intelligence, manipulation, strategies, and on rare occasion, brute strength. Now, I have said a lot about the protagonist, but what about the world he lives in? I know I promised at the start of this video that this would be about why many readers, or just people generally, misunderstand Fang Yuan, and I will get to that. But first, I want to talk to you about the world of Gu, which the story of Reverend Insanity takes place in. The Gu world in Reverend Insanity is very large and complex. The southern border alone is at least 7 to 8 times bigger than Earth, and the overall world is several times larger than our sun. I could explain more about the world, but that would take an entire video just going over the various regions and areas in the Gu world. Just know it's friggin' huge, like very big. And in this absurdly huge world, there are regular people called mortals and people who can use special powers called Gu masters. These Gu masters use their primeval essences to control beings called Gu, which have supernatural abilities. As is said in the book, humans are the spirit of all living things. Gu are the essence of heaven and earth. Gu masters can do all sorts of things with Gu, and they reign supreme in the world of Gu. Well, technically, Gu immortals, or rather the Venerables, are the ones who reign supreme. But you get the gist. I mean, I've said a lot of Gu right now.
Really, nigga?
Mortals are weaklings that are hardly considered in this world, and they have very little value. Their lives are cheap like grass, and only strength matters in this world. See, the world of Gu is actually pretty symbolic. I'm going to go a bit into ancient Chinese history, so please bear with me. Gu can be literally said to be poison. And it was used in ancient China in black magic practices such as manipulating partners, creating malignant diseases, and even causing death. According to Chinese folklore, a Gu spirit could literally transform into various animals, typically a worm, caterpillar, snake, frog, dog, or pig. Now, I got all this information from Wikipedia, and I'm no Chinese scholar, so correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below. Why is all of this relevant, you might ask? Well, I found them to be a cool detail and I wanted to add them in the video. Okay, on a serious note though, you can look at this as a way to explain the Gu worms, which literally grants power in the novels. In some iterations, Gu is also shown as a practice involving trapping the deadliest poisonous insects in a cauldron until there is only one left. It was believed that the last surviving insect would possess the most lethal poison. Essentially, the strong consumes the weak and whoever survives is the strongest. Sounds very similar to the Gu world in my opinion. Gu Zhen Ren knew what he was cooking when he made up this world, and it is very evident that he put a lot of thought and work into this novel. Speaking of a lot of thought, the legend of Renzu, basically a folktale within the Gu world, is also well crafted and shows just how alive the world is. Honestly, peak writing if I do say so myself. Alright, enough glazing. Let's get back to the analysis. The Gu world is quite similar to Earth, but also different in many ways. Just like in the Gu world, there are weak and strong people on Earth. There are those with power, there are institutions, governmental bodies, organizations, and laws that have to be abided by. There are morals, ethics, codes of conduct, religion, all of them being forms of social order that keep the world in a cohesive state and ensure stability. However, it is in these later concepts that the world of Gu begins to stray from what we see on Earth. Yes, the organization and institutions reign supreme in both worlds, but the major difference that exists is one that Fang Yuan is able to properly understand as a transmigrator: power. More specifically, human power. On Earth, individual powers can be overlooked for the strength of the collective. No matter how rich or strong a person is, it can never be stronger or richer than the institution is under. In the end, banks regulate wealth, governments oversee actions, and a single bullet can kill even the strongest man. No single individual is worth more than the collective, and so no single man can rise above the system. If Elon Musk commits a crime, he can be sent to jail. Sure, you can make all sorts of excuses for him, but if he is found guilty by a court of competent jurisdiction, he can pay for his crimes. If the USA acts out too much or violates a treaty, it can be called out by other members of the United Nations. If a certain branch of government of a country acts up, you can count on the other branches to intervene. It's called separation of power and checks and balances. Even if the most powerful nation in the world decides to act up, it can easily be subdued if other nations gang up against it. Of course, there are caveats here and there, but I'm sure you catch my drift. The individual is always weaker than the collective, and in unity, there is strength. at least on Earth. But the Gu world is different in many ways. Here, a man can be strong enough to destroy entire mountains in a single breath. People can freeze entire lakes, and one person can control millions of beasts to decimate entire populations. The supernatural power of Gu suddenly grants the individual an opportunity to transcend the collective. Of course, the collective is still seen as the ultimate kind of strength in the Gu world, as when you gather exceptional individuals into a group, it can seemingly become unstoppable, right? Wrong, at least according to Fang Yuan. You see, he believes that people become too shackled with superficial things like expectations, duties, prestige, rules, and a host of other things, which end up limiting an individual from ever reaching his full potential. To him, laws aren't meant to serve the strong, but protect the weak, and by doing so, they bind the strong and make them subservient to weaker men in a way. But more on that later. Let's focus on the ideology of the Gu world itself. Conventional values exist in the Gu world alongside more radical notions. For example, familial ties are elevated and loyalty to one's clan is seen as an utmost value. Think of it like how patriotism is praised and how loyalty, gratitude, and responsibility to your people is viewed on Earth. However, there are other values or lack thereof that also exist in the Gu world. For example, mortals are seen as trash in the Gu world. Their lives are cheap like grass. One could kill an average mortal and no one would really bat an eye. They are nothing more than common slaves, quite literally at the mercy of Gu masters. A prime display of why power trumps all in the Gu world. Also in the Lotm place, women are seen as nothing more than accessories, all thanks to the legendary misogyny of the great ancestor, immortal Venerable giant son. An example of how a single individual can influence the world around him in the Gu world. How can one man transcend the norm and shift entire cultures of people who are, mind you, over 5 times the population of Earth? I could go on, but I'm pretty sure you get my point. The most important thing to mention about the morals and ethics of the Gu world is this thing called rules and regulations, and how an organization uses it to bind its members. These shackles offer comfort and reward to those who abide by it and give punishment to the ones who turn against them. However, quite ironically, we also see that the rules and regulations tend to punish those who abide by them and reward those who break them, or rather those who were never bound by them in the first place. This is because, according to Fang Yuan, they merely tie one down with superficial barriers and provide the illusion of profit while also robbing you of more gains. If you choose to be honest and follow the rules, you have gains that you may consider to be sufficient and proportional to your efforts. However, if you choose to be unscrupulous and skirt around the rules, is it not possible to obtain even more benefits for yourself? Unfortunately, most people are too blinded by the immediate gains that the rules provide and are brainwashed by the systematic education of society and the clans that they grow up in to see the truth that Fang Yuan sees. They don't understand that just the way mortals are subjected to the wills of the Gu masters have also become subject to a concept of their own creation, the rules they abide by, the organization they belong to. In Fang Yuan's words, these fools are everywhere, restrained by emotions and morals. They deserve to be stupidly manipulated by the rules. What's sadder is that when they see others not being restrained, they will jump out and criticize, trying to impart these morals to the people, not allowing others to have more freedom than them. In this process, they would enjoy this ridiculous moral superiority and bliss. These people, they had a body full of abilities. Some even had higher cultivation than him. But for what? They were just pawns, merely restrained dogs. What truly stalls a person's success is not talent, but mindset. Any organization, once a person is born, will constantly impart their morals and rules, constantly brainwashing. Those that want to surpass humanity's achievements have to break these restraints on their mindset. Sadly, most people are trapped by this their entire lives, using this to move forward with motivation and even using their chained collar as a symbol of pride. Now, as a quick tangent, before we delve back into Fang Yuan and tie everything together, I want you all to ask yourselves a simple question. What really is evil? Is it the death of innocence in a plane crash? Is it the systematic oppression by the ruling class inflicted upon the powerless masses? What of a man domestically abusing his partner while physically assaulting his own child? Eating human flesh, defrauding people of their money, forcing yourself on a person, and so on. I'm sure many of us can agree that these are all prime examples of evil. However, we can truly separate evil into two kinds: natural and moral. Now, I could go into definitions and semantics for the two of them, but I think it all boils down to this: who can we blame? For natural evil, we can't really blame anyone. The evil acts aren't done by moral agents, but instead neutral forces that gratuitously enact harm, some mild while others unspeakably wicked. Yet there remains no one to direct our rage towards. It is quite simply the work of nature, an act of God. Such evil lies well beyond the realm of moral scrutiny, and it is useless to try forcing those standards on it. Then there is the other kind of evil, moral evil. An act done by an active moral agent that can be judged by our own morality as humans. When lightning strikes a pregnant woman and she dies, we do not raise our fists or throw stones into the sky. However, if a drunk husband should lay hands on his pregnant wife and her life is lost, including the life of her unborn child, that is a completely different matter. Someone is responsible. Someone can be blamed. When we talk about evil, especially in analyzing characters, most of the time we see it through the lens of moral evil. And why shouldn't we? We're all moral beings, right? Morality is something deeply ingrained into each and every one of us. Or is it? Many people have argued on this matter and have been unable to arrive at an answer that satisfies both sides of the conversation. Is morality objective, or is it subjective? Is it something that exists regardless of bias, something that is as natural to us as the laws of gravity or space and time? Or is there more nuance to it that makes it more relativistic than we would like to admit? Bringing it into the realm of subjectivity, do we refuse to kill because it is inherently wrong to take human life? Or because we have all agreed that it is wrong? If we take it as the latter, an individual may choose not to agree with this consensus and kill, yet that wouldn't make him inherently wrong, would it? Instead, what truly makes him evil is the consensus itself and the group that points at him, deeming him to be morally inferior, having committed an offense that is viewed by many as wrong and evil. Such an individual would otherwise not be viewed so negatively if they purely killed another out of self-defense to protect their defenseless child or to defend their chastity. All of this is to say that there are many ways to look at life and morality. Whether you believe morality is subjective or objective, would you not still say that you interpret your morality through a subjective lens? And so regardless of its objectivity or subjectivity, you still view it subjectively. At least that's what I think. Now, let us delve a little deeper and look at the individual and not the collective. What makes you, you? Is it just the DNA and chromosomes and all the cells in your body? Is it the genetics passed down by your parents? Or could it be that there is something more, something external? Enter another popular debate. Is a man good because he was born good or because of his environment? Likewise, does a man become evil because of the world surrounding him, or was he already naturally predisposed to partake of such forbidden fruit? Regardless of which side of the fence you stand on when it comes to this particular issue, it remains true that for the most part, both sides play a role in human development. Certain traits are naturally instilled into a person, whether through evolutionary means or pure genetics, while others are given by the environment. We can't help both of these things because just as we are unable to control our natural predispositions, we also cannot control the environment we happen to be born and raised in. In the end, we are utterly powerless to the factors that shape us to become the people we are today. And yet, we possess the illusion of control, free will. Many of us claim to have it, but just how much of our will is actually free and how much of it remains shackled? The last thing I want us to look at before we proceed to Fang Yuan is the concept of action versus intention. What makes a person good? Is it his action or is it his intention? Are you good because you help cure the sick, even though your intention is something else entirely? Are you evil because you killed a man despite having no intention of doing so in the first place? The problem with determining this is that unlike with actions, no one truly knows the intention of an individual apart from the individual themselves. As a famous dictum in English criminal law says, even the devil knoweth not the heart of a man. Besides being unable to decipher another person's intention, do most of us even care for it? After all, what concerns a grieving mother with the intentions of her son's killer? And does the beggar on the road truly care to comprehend the mind of his benefactors? No. Ultimately, humanity is conditioned to place more emphasis on actions rather than intentions. However, this in itself is a superficial judgment that shows how flawed our conception and perception of reality is in the first place. What we call good is just how we see it to be. What we deem to be evil is only so because of our limited understanding of it. And that is because the concern is not with the underlying currents that lurk beneath the action itself or the motivation that spurred these atrocities to occur, but the fact that they did take place. Don't believe me? Then think about this. What intention does lightning have when it strikes a man dead? Or what motivates the earth to rumble and shatter apart, desecrating lands and taking lives? The answer is none. Yet we still call these evil because we care more about what has been done rather than why it was done. Fang Yuan is a very complex character, and it shows the more you read Reverend Insanity. His ideologies are never simple and shallow, but well thought out and with ample justifications. Despite being an evident villain in the story, Fang Yuan has a way of entrapping readers in his philosophy, allowing you to properly view the world through his lens, to see why he is the way he is and thinks the way he thinks. And for the most part, readers tend to agree with him. He isn't evil just for the sake of being evil. Neither is he evil out of some other superficial notion or uncontrollable circumstance. Actually, I don't think he is evil at all. I don't think Reverend Insanity is a novel about an evil protagonist, a villain in a world of heroes, or anything as simplistic as that. Instead, I believe this is a story about the will of a man and how far he can go in order to achieve his goals. Fang Yuan has no concern with morality, and it has no concern with him. The central theme of Reverend Insanity is perseverance. I happened to speak with Gu Zhen Ren, the author of Reverend Insanity, when I traveled to China for my Shanghai Literature Week, and one of the main questions he answered was what went in his head when creating Reverend Insanity. What did he want to express by creating Fang Yuan? The answer was simple yet shocking. Senior Gu Zhen Ren said he wanted to create a character that wouldn't give up no matter what happened. A man who would pursue his dreams no matter what anyone said or told him. Someone who would brave the seas and stick to his own path, staying true to himself as he walked towards his goals, even if he walked it alone. He drew parallels between Fang Yuan and himself, and how he also refused to buckle under pressure and didn't give up as an author. He refused to let the opinions of others bring him down, and he continued on until his hard work finally bore fruit. That is the core of Reverend Insanity: perseverance, refusing to give up no matter what, doing away with the superficial words and expectation of everyone else for the sake of your own goals, staying true to oneself until the end and continuing down the path no matter where it leads. That stubbornness, that brazen affront to the natural state of the world, that arrogance that seems to border the realm of madness which a man must possess to swim against the tide of society and carve a path never before seen. That is true insanity. Reverend Insanity. And that is what Fang Yuan embodies as the demon whose nature does not change, even in death. The reason Fang Yuan chases eternal life isn't tied to some villainous notion of world domination or some superficial notion of ultimate power. Instead, he sees it as the only thing worth pursuing. Everything else is temporary, flawed, and in a way corrupted by one thing or the other. As a result, none of them are worth pursuing. Whether it is money, power, women, or other forms of pleasure, they are all temporary and do not have any staying power. They can only be seen as a means to an end, but if anyone pursues them as an end goal, isn't that person merely chasing after vanities? After all, it does not matter how much money and power one possesses, they will ultimately die, or their possessions will perish before them. Either way, is it not all meaningless? On earth, with eternal life being nothing more than a work of fiction, many either turn to religion or surrender to the absurdity of existence and admit their inevitable defeat at the hands of death. However, for Fang Yuan, who lives in this supernatural Gu world, he sees a possibility to grasp this concept that should only exist in fiction. All living things die. That in itself is common sense. So anyone who desires something as unrealistic as immortality has to be insane. However, Fang Yuan does not see it that way. Humans should naturally be unable to fly, right? Yet Gu exists that can make man sprout wings like an eagle and soar the skies. Gu exists to make man breathe fire like a dragon and allows man to return entire rivers to their natural state. There is even Gu that can affect time itself, allowing a man to travel downstream through the river of time and restart his life from scratch. If all of these miracles can exist, why then would one rule out eternal life? To him, this is the only thing worth pursuing, and so he decides to carve a path that everyone else dares not take, as he sets his heart ablaze with ambition, tempering himself with his unwavering perseverance as he marches on, as one who courts insanity. Fang Yuan, more than anyone, knows how arduous the path to immortality is. He recognizes the chances of him obtaining it are next to zero. Yet, this is the only thing that has value in his eyes. As such, he has decided to obtain it, no matter the challenge and no matter the cost. This is in fact the true reason he usually does unspeakable acts. It isn't because he enjoys them, but because they are necessary for him to reach his goals. That or they do not in any way impede his advancement towards his goals. The same way Gu Masters consider mortal lives to be as grass, he also views Gu Masters, no, not just them, anything in his path as nothing more. In fact, he actively calls everyone nothing more than animal dung. He also sees himself as no different, referring to himself as an ant compared to the obstacles in his way and the dreams he aspires to achieve one day. Most importantly, the same way Fang Yuan is brutal towards others, he displays an equal measure of cruelty towards himself. From cutting off his own ears, to burning himself alive, to bathing in bronze, hot bronze, and so on. Fang Yuan would do just about anything and everything to achieve his goals. This is because he does not consider these actions from the lens of morality. Neither does he view them as anything but mere actions. But he genuinely does not differentiate between friend or foe, himself or strangers, when it comes to the pursuit of his ultimate goal. He is as likely to commit evil to himself as he is to another person. In a sense, his intentions are not so much as inflicting evil, but seeking profit through those acts. What truly exemplifies his moral neutrality is that Fang Yuan is just as capable of performing good deeds as he is of committing the most unspeakable atrocities. He has helped people throughout the story, and he has displayed selfless virtues to those who view him from their subjective lens. As Fang Yuan himself has said before, I am actually a considerate person. Sometimes this statement feels like a lie, while other times they appear true to the person he is dealing with. Regardless, he is neither concerned with what others perceive to be good or evil, because none of those matter to him. Some see him as a hero, others see him as a villain, but he is neither. He is simply Fang Yuan. As I mentioned earlier, Reverend Insanity's core theme revolves around perseverance and staying true to oneself, no matter what. And how does one achieve that? How does one break free from the shackles that one has no control over? Well, Fang Yuan explains it quite nicely. A lifetime of effort to forge one sword. Today, my sword aims beyond the clouds. Refine Gu, refine human, refine heaven. Is it nature that shackles you? Are you bound by natural predispositions? Conquer it, rise above, transcend. Is it nurture? Is it the environment that holds you down? Defy the world, spread your wings and fly into the heavens, swim against the tide of fate and fight against the world with all of your might. As Fang Yuan says, I would rather I let the world down than the world lets me down. Rely on yourself and stay true to yourself. Refine human, yourself. Refine Gu, the essence of heaven and earth. Refine, refine, refine. As I already established earlier in the video, whether we think morality is objective or subjective, we all view morality subjectively. The same is the case for the denizens of the Gu world. The same people who believe mortal lives are worthless cherish their clan members above all else. And the same ones who believe women are mere accessories will fight to the death to protect their own sisters or mothers. This shows a disconnect from an objective view on morality and exposes the hypocrisy in upholding certain standards as true or just. After all, if you say that the lives of your clansmen are valuable and I am wrong for killing them, what would you then say about yourself who views the lives of mortals or enemy clansmen as having no value at all? Wouldn't you call yourself hypocritical for labeling me as a villain for killing one of yours when you would be regarded as a hero for killing members of a separate camp? And then let's look at the rules of the organization that are elevated by every member of the community. What objective standard is there for placing everyone under the rules that were established in the first place by flawed people who committed their own fair share of atrocities in their time? Even the elders came against each other, using the rules to their benefit and as weapons against one another, while simultaneously restricting themselves to the very same chains. So why should these rules exist in the first place? No, more accurately, why should one be bound by those rules that exist? Would it not be more effective for an individual to use the rules to his benefit when he can, but not be bound by them at the same time? Would it not serve a man to not be concerned by fleeting things such as morality and simply follow his own path as he walks towards his own goals? The ones who decide morality are flawed and hypocrites, equally capable of the same kind of wickedness. So, why listen to them? This is the situation Fang Yuan finds himself in. The Gu world itself is flawed from the start, corrupt in the most disturbing ways. Rules exist to offer some semblance of order and cohesion, but this only marks the ugly truth that might mix right in this world, just as is seen in the ancient Chinese practice of Gu. It is because of these reasons and many more that Fang Yuan simply isn't concerned with morality, because morality itself is superficial and can change at any time. The righteous factions of this world have their own views of morality, and even the vilest scum of the demonic factions have their codes that they live by. Members of the righteous factions disagree on many things, and if it is convenient for them, they will bend, if not downright break the rules that they have already established. If that is the case, it's not foolishness to remain bound by those laws. Why remain under the control of authority, brainwashed and subjugated for the purpose of the organization, when you can tread your own glorious path and use everything as well as everyone at your disposal to get what you want? So what if you are scorned by everyone? So what if they call you a monster or a demon? In the end, if you win, who would refuse to ally themselves with you? Those who despise you will fall silent and buckle their knees in servitude to your will. That is how fickle such a thing as morality is, especially in the Gu world. As I asked before, what makes something truly evil or good? Is it the intention or action? Whichever one you choose, it is important to note that in the case of Fang Yuan, it is almost impossible to pin him down for either case. Let's start with intentions. We've already seen that Fang Yuan's intentions are completely dissociated from the concept of morality and ethics. He does not care for any of those things, and he simply walks down a path he chooses to walk, not needing the permission or approval of anyone. His intentions lie in a goal that neither have good or bad elements to it. It is simply the neutral pursuit of ultimate purpose, the persistent march towards eternal life. With intentions out of the way, let us look at his actions. Indeed, some of his actions can be said to be truly evil, horrific, unspeakable, and downright devious. Fang Yuan's schemes usually involve the loss of many lives, and many of them die in agonizing ways. However, Fang Yuan has also helped quite a lot of people. He has traded, offered counsel, and even labored for people without asking for anything in return. Did he do this out of the kindness of his heart? No. But remember, we are only looking at his actions and not his intentions. Fang Yuan has been a villain and also a hero in Reverend Insanity. So why do we call him evil? Is it because we, as the readers, can see through his intentions, even though the characters in the story cannot? But if his intentions appear neutral and devoid of morality, yet he does both good and bad things, why do we pass judgment on him and call him evil? Fang Yuan is a utilitarian, which means he will do whatever brings him the most profit. If he has to choose between saving a child and killing a man, and saving a child brings him more benefits, he will save the child. Likewise, if he has to kill the same child or crack his smile, and killing the child brings him more benefits, he will kill the child with tears in his eyes. He cares not for the perceived morals of his actions or the judgment of others. All that matters is what can be gained. And anything he gains is but a means to an end in his endless pursuit of eternal life. I mentioned this before, but Fang Yuan is as ruthless to himself as he is ruthless to others. He can go through torture, disfigure himself, and put himself through the most agonizing experience if it means he's one step closer to his goals. An interesting thing about this character is that he in no way justifies his actions by any metric of morality. He is no hypocrite. He neither considers himself to be good or evil, and he makes no excuse for his actions. He simply does what is true to himself, and he is prepared to also receive whatever harsh recompense others throw at him. If you believe him to be evil, he holds no grudge towards you for seeking revenge. If you end up killing him, good for you. But he also has no thought if he kills you as well for his benefit. It is that simplicity that makes this character and his actions all the more fascinating to experience. Fang Yuan holds no regard for the superficial and human views on morality simply because he no longer considers himself as one. He is not swayed by others, neither is he concerned with what drives the rest of mankind, mortal or Gu masters alike. In fact, a major aspect of humanity is the fact that we change and we evolve, but Fang Yuan remains the same demon and he does not change. He refuses to. He stays the same old demon from the start of the story to the end, pursuing the same thing. The only thing that changes for Fang Yuan is his approach, his knowledge, and the Gu worms at his disposal. However, none of these things define Fang Yuan. Just as a Gu master's vital Gu remains unchanged, so does Fang Yuan's core self maintain its consistency, perseverance towards eternal life. Nothing more, nothing less. As such, it should be viewed as a force of nature or an entirely different kind of existence and not a human bound by normal human ethics. Would you call a lion evil for preying on a man? Would you call a storm wicked for claiming the lives of innocent sailors? You can call the act itself evil, but does that hold any meaning for the one who commits the act? I don't think so. The same way God cannot be held to the same standards as mortal men, and the same way Gu masters cannot be held accountable by mortals, is the same way Fang Yuan ought not to be viewed with such mundane things as morals. Not by the residents of the Gu world, and certainly not by the readers of Reverend Insanity. This video has gone on for too long, far longer than I intended it to. I should have stopped at the previous section, but I don't think this video will be complete without me recommending Reverend Insanity to you, my viewers. If you haven't read the novel and you've made it this far, first of all, wow! Like, seriously, wow. I can't imagine there are many of you who stayed, so you have my respect and my gratitude. Maybe you've seen some TikTok edits of Fang Yuan, or maybe you've heard of his quotes, or maybe you've even seen similar recommendations or videos about Reverend Insanity online. Whatever the case may be, I would personally like to tell you to read Reverend Insanity. It is peak. I honestly cannot stress this enough. Please read it. To offer a few reasons why you should give it a try and what you stand to gain by reading Reverend Insanity, let me just say this. You gain wisdom and insight into the world and how it operates, Gu world and its similarities as well as contrast with Earth, legend of Renzu, Fang Yuan's characterization and his actions throughout the story, unique power system and world building, interesting characters and incredible writing quality. All of these and many more are encapsulated in just 2,334 chapters of Reverend Insanity. Oh yes, did I forget to mention just how long it is? It's ridiculous. As I make this video, I've not even reached up to 25% of the story and I just can't help frothing at the mouth when I tell you all how good it is and how peak it is. Maybe I'll make a dedicated video on Reverend Insanity's world building or power system or other things later on. If you're interested in stuff like that, please let me know, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I would also like to emphasize that I do not in any way approve of the actions committed by Fang Yuan. In fact, in the modern world of Earth, most of his actions will be considered downright abominable and evil, and the novel goes out of its way to emphasize this several times. However, by looking at the context of the Gu world and also taking a deep dive into character's background, psychology, and the motivations, we can better understand Fang Yuan as well as the actions he takes. Please let me know your thoughts down below. I'm especially curious about what the readers of Reverend Insanity especially have to say about what I have said in this video. For my viewers who aren't familiar with Reverend Insanity but still found this video like entertaining or informative, I would also like to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I'm working on some content right now for the channel, but I could always use some suggestions about video ideas or just suggestions that can help out the channel. So please let me know what I can do to improve my video, my quality, and just video ideas generally. What would you like me to talk about? Once again, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, right? Cheers.